Every so often, someone will ask me about the teachings of Krishnamurti, and about whether what he was teaching when he was alive was true or not. So to address this question, first of all we need to get a sense of what it was that Krishnamurti was teaching. Krishnamurti was a famous spiritual teacher who taught during the 20th century, and his teachings were extensive. However, to summarize his core message, we can refer to a paragraph from the Krishnamurti Foundation, which was an organization established to preserve his teachings. The paragraph reads, "Meditation," he says, "is not something you do or experience, nor can it be learned from another. It is not concentration or contemplation. There is nowhere to get to, and movement of the mind in any direction, with any purpose, is not meditation, but is time-bound, rooted in the known. Even simply being, the future and past banished, is questioned by Krishnamurti, since its space is a centre, a me." So that's from the Krishnamurti Foundation. As I mentioned, Krishnamurti's teachings are extensive, but this paragraph does summarize the essence of his teaching. Meditation, according to Krishnamurti, is not something you actively do, nor is it something to be acquired through instruction or practice. It is not a technique, method, or even a specific state of being with a fixed center. Instead, it is something that is beyond all these things. Now the question arises quite often, was Krishnamurti correct? Is this what meditation is? It's always wise to question everything, especially when studying spiritual disciplines like yoga. In this case, the answer is that he was correct, but only partially correct. Krishnamurti's definition of meditation is one that's often found in a high-level aspect of something called jnana yoga. Jnana means knowledge, and yoga means union. So jnana yoga is a set of spiritual practices that lead to union through knowledge. Another name for these practices is self-inquiry practices, which is why you will often hear Krishnamurti use the word inquire. Krishnamurti's teachings are high-level jnana yoga teachings, so he's teaching beyond the level of asking questions such as "Who am I?" and teaching at the level where we are beginning to simply see things as they truly are, seeing our own true nature. However, there is another widely recognized definition of meditation in yoga, one that involves active practices. This type of meditation typically requires sitting in a specific posture, closing one's eyes, and engaging in a technique, often focusing on an object like the breath or a mantra. Even forms of meditation that involve simply observing the mind's movements are considered practices, as they entail a process where we are choosing to do something. We're choosing to sit quietly and observe the mind without engaging with what is happening. Krishnamurti's teachings, that he may say are not teachings, are methods of spiritual inquiry practice that require a high degree of abiding inner silence to already be present in the mind for them to be effective. And this is well recognized in yoga, and has been recognized for over 1,000 years. This abiding inner silence does not necessarily mean a complete absence of thought, but rather a state in which thoughts, sensations, emotions, and sensory objects can arise in the mind without any judgment arising, such as "this is good" or "this is bad," "this is right" or "this is wrong," or any attachment or aversion arising, or any sense of identification arising in the mind, such as this is me or this is mine. Only when this level of abiding inner silence is achieved do Krishnamurti's teachings and similar advanced practices of jnana yoga become relevant and useful. In reality, most individuals do not possess the necessary degree of abiding inner silence when they begin their spiritual journey to be able to relate to Krishnamurti's teachings in a useful way. Developing this stillness requires years, if not decades, of consistent meditation practice. Krishnamurti's teachings are meant for individuals who have cultivated this deep inner silence. So then we could ask the question, is there anyone who is starting out on the spiritual path who does already have the ability to relate to these high-level practices? My guess would be that only about 1 in a million people could grasp and apply Krishnamurti's teachings without any prior meditation practice. Krishnamurti himself actually acknowledged this limitation. If you watch some of the recorded videos from his later years, you can see him becoming frustrated with his audiences because they're not able to grasp what he was teaching. And shortly before he died, he was actually asked directly if he thought that anyone who had come to listen to him teach had understood what he was saying. He replied that no one had understood. So perhaps my estimate of 1 in a million people is actually over-optimistic. But once we have developed abiding inner silence in the mind through the practice of meditation, and have developed the ability to witness the contents of the mind and the objects of the senses without any interference, then we can begin to make use of jnana yoga practices, the methods of self-inquiry. When we do this, it can be useful to begin with quite gentle forms of self-inquiry, such as, who is it that is thinking this thought? Or, who is it that is observing this feeling? So we are beginning with objects, but inquiring into the nature of our relationship with those objects, witnessing the nature of the observed and the observer. Then, beyond this, we begin to be able to discriminate clearly between those things that will lead us towards liberation and those things that will lead us away from liberation. And we can actively choose only those things that will lead us towards liberation. This is the stage of viveka, or discrimination. And beyond this, we come to a state called vairagya, which is a balanced and equanimous and very peaceful and blissful state, where there's no longer any active choosing between one thing or another thing. Everything simply is, and is treated with equanimity. And this is the stage of yoga where the teachings of Krishnamurti become useful and relevant. And then we can engage with the inquiry practices that he taught in a way that will be beneficial and useful for us. When we are ready, there are plenty of these high-level teachings available. As well as the writings of Krishnamurti, there are the writings of Ramana Maharshi, Nisargadatta Maharaj, Papaji of Lucknow, Adi Shankaracharya, the Bhagavad Gita, the classical Upanishads, and so on. There is no shortage of these high-level jnana yoga teachings for those who are ready for them. Krishnamurti did express these teachings in a very beautiful way. I would say just as beautifully as the way they are expressed in the classical Upanishads. If you do feel ready to engage with these high-level yoga practices and are wondering where to start, then I can recommend Krishnamurti's notebook. It's a short collection of things he wrote in a journal and is an easy introduction to his writings. There is one more point to mention on this topic, and that is that sometimes these very high-level spiritual writings will act as inspiration for anyone at any stage of their path. Sometimes people will find a book by Krishnamurti and feel so inspired by it, but they then take up a regular meditation practice at home. And then, many years later, will come back to it and find that they can directly engage in the inquiry practices that he talked about. So his works can be inspiring for beginners on the spiritual path and directly applicable and useful for advanced level spiritual practitioners. And then, when the advanced level practitioners engage effectively with these inquiry practices, they would at some point realize that there's no such thing as an advanced spiritual practitioner, which is exactly what Krishnamurti wrote in one of his books. And this is one of the divine paradoxes of yoga.